I may have to get into this in detail in the second part of the show, but the Supreme Court yesterday, I think it was yesterday, granted the toilet rats administration's effort to end a judge's order that required the toilet rat to reinstate about 1,400 Department of Education employees who had been fired. So this ruling yesterday, and it was the usual 6-3 with the supermajority of the Christian fascists determining that it's time to end the Department of Justice. These fuckers. I mean, I just... Mitch McConnell may have made it possible for the toilet rat to put these three bums on the Supreme Court, but it's the Supreme Court itself that has become the chief enabler of this out-of-control, senile fuck Donald Trump. So the order was issued yesterday. It was unsigned because it was on the so-called emergency docket, of course, and it didn't offer, according to what I have here, any rationale from the six bastards who signed off on it. No rationale for allowing the firings to be carried out while litigation is still going. That's the thing. It's still under appeal. But the toilet rat has put together a cadre of people who claim to be attorneys who are really traitorous fucking animals to the U.S. Constitution. And they make these applications through the emergency docket, which I was not very familiar with prior to the toilet rat assuming power this time. And by using the emergency docket, they get immediate hearing and immediate dismissal, which is what the toilet rat wants, immediate dismissal of the restraining order or the injunction that was put in place to rehire the 1,400 Department of Education employees. And the fact that the majority, this supermajority of Christian devils, decided to make this ruling while the case is under litigation it's beyond me to understand that. I am not educated in the law, certainly not constitutional law, but it just seems to me it was a horrible, horrible move. However, in a scathing dissent, now it's Justice Sonia Sotomayor's turn. After Justice Jackson had her turn, now it's Sotomayor's turn. This is what she wrote, quote, "When the executive publicly announces its intent to break the law and then executes on that promise, it is the judiciary's duty to check that lawlessness, not expedite it." End quote. And then she went on to say that the decision by the majority was, quote, "indefensible, and it hands the executive the power to repeal statutes by firing all those necessary to carry them out. The majority is either willfully blind to the implications of its ruling or naive. But either way, the threat to our Constitution's separation of powers is grave." End quote. Now, the other liberal or rational or sensible or the other two justices who believe in the further existence of this democratic republic, Kagan and Jackson, joined Sotomayor's dissent. But when Justice Sotomayor said the majority is either willfully blind or naive, I would respectfully disagree. Who am I to disagree with Sonia Sotomayor? But I disagree, let's say, in my own little thought processes, because I don't think either is the case. I don't think they're blind. I think they know perfectly fucking well what they're doing. These are Christian devils who sit on the Supreme Court, and the determination is to destroy public education, replace it with religious education. This is the goal, the aim, and has been for decades. And they finally have a willing asshole, Donald Trump, who doesn't give a fuck about religion. And they have a supermajority made up of these Christian devils who will do anything, any goddamn thing to destroy public education, and they're doing it. All I can say is that where it concerns this decision by the 6 Nazis, it's just fucking outrageous to me that John Roberts lends his name to this massive attempt to destroy this republic. I don't get it. Now, very quickly, to maybe synopsize this whole thing, the toilet rat had argued, well, his fucked up lawyers argued, that the district judge, Myung Jun, had overstepped his bounds, his constitutional duties when he granted that injunction back in May. And the Solicitor General, this rotten bastard who works for Trump, John Sauer, in his pleadings before the Supreme Court, noted that the High Court had recently lifted another order that this same district judge had issued against the toilet rat on education-related grants. So in his June 6th argument before the Supreme Court, well, it wasn't really an argument, I don't think. It was an application. But this is what he wrote, quote, "For the second time in 3 months, the same district court has thwarted the executive branch's authority to manage the Department of Education, despite lacking jurisdiction to second-guess the executive's internal management decisions," end quote. Well, isn't that lovely language? I guess that is appropriate Supreme Court language, but to me, it's enough to gag a fucking, toilet rat. It's just unbelievable. To second-guess the toilet rat's management decisions? This fucker doesn't make management decisions. He makes destruction decisions. I'm so sick of this fucking charade that the Supreme Court listens to. I don't expect more than what these dirty goddamn should be disbarred lawyers are doing, speaking for the toilet rat. Of course they're going to say that. They're fucking scum, these lawyers. They are willful partners in the destruction of this republic. God. But I'm just so goddamn over listening to this bullshit language. He lacks jurisdiction to second-guess the executive's internal management decisions. How? Take a breath, Malloy, Jesus. But I am dumbfounded, flummoxed, blown away. It feels like there are things crawling around inside my brain that shouldn't be there when I'm shown or read or I'm told or I witness how crazy the whole fucking thing has become. To suggest that the toilet rat makes management decisions in a legal filing? Yeah, he does. So John Sauer, this little Nazi mouthpiece for the toilet rat, he went on in his application to the court to have this injunction lifted. Sauer said, quote, "This court curtailed that overreach when the district court attempted to prevent the department from terminating discretionary grants." He was referring to the Supreme Court's prior intervention. And this little prick added this: "In this case, the district court is attempting to prevent the Department of Education from restructuring its workforce, despite lacking jurisdiction several times over. Intervention is again warranted," end quote, warranted by the court. So what he's saying is that the judge had no legal or constitutional or jurisdictional right to order this injunction to stop or to reinstate the firing of these 1,400 Department of Education employees. And how soon before the school term starts? What are we, 6 weeks away in some districts? Not even that. Now, the group that was opposing these Nazi son of a bitches, whether it's Trump or this fucker Sauer or these 6 Catholic terrorists on the Supreme Court, opposing all that was a coalition of states led by New York. And that coalition defended the district judge, saying this, quote, he correctly concluded, based on a detailed factual record unrebutted by the petitioners, that the states are likely to show that the reduction in force is arbitrary and capricious, contrary to law, and unconstitutional, end quote. But the 6 Catholic devils on the Supreme Court, what did they say to that? Well, a judicial version of go fuck yourselves. We hold with our Lord and Christ God Jesus, Master Donald Trump, who appointed half of us to this blessed Supreme Court. I would imagine that's what they say to themselves or think to themselves, these dirty bastards. What, and that original, or the reference that this bastard Sauer referred to of the previous time the court struck down a restraining order or an injunction had to do with grants to students going to school, whether they were Pell Grants or whatever they were, to allow people who desperately need the money to attain for themselves a college education. The Supreme Court said, fuck you too. If your mama and daddy don't have the money to pay for your education, you're going to be uneducated as far as university level education is concerned. And I'm not denying that there are other forms of education that are equally or possibly greater in importance where it concerns the running of this republic. But to specifically say, as the Supreme Court did in the last time they ruled in favor of the Trump bum and against the Department of Education, to say, well, you're not entitled to any grants. What the fuck is all this? These discretionary, let's get rid of them. I mean, what are they trying to do? Well, you know what they're trying to do. And if you still have doubts, Truth Seeker, I mean, really, your humble and obedient servant here has been wheezing and screaming and farting and pounding the desk about this stuff for a couple of decades now, about this move to fascism. If you have any doubt that this is occurring now, then you might need to see your primary care physician and have him give you a thorough exam, or her give you, maybe have her take your blood pressure or do a brainwave scan or see if you're still fucking functioning on any kind of a coherent level. This is happening now. Now, I'm not talking about you. You know what I'm saying. But this is happening now, and we're witness to it. We are witness to this. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. The Progressive Voices Network brings you commercial-free commentary from today's leading progressive radio hosts and pundits, like me, Mike Malloy, 24 hours a day. I'm not your typical old guy from the 80s or the 90s talk radio host, and Progressive Voices is not your typical talk radio network. It's a listener-supported nonprofit with no corporate control whatsoever over our broadcast. So hosts like me, Mike Malloy, are free to rant and scream and carry on about whatever we like. We're often controversial, but we're never boring. Weeknights, 9 p.m. in the East, 6 p.m. in the West on the Progressive Voices Network. Always progressive, always on. I'm Mike Malloy. Keep it lit.